What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick 6 show, week number 8, sponsored by Thrive. We'll tell you about a nice, sweet deposit bonus later on the show. Usual suspects, as always, Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis, John Daigle, 4 for 4, and Bet Spurts as well. John, do we have any look-backs, anything as far as anything we're saying as far as last week? We're generally a forward-looking show. Chalk absolutely annihilated, especially at running back. It was just insane with Walker and with Jacobs and Eckler. And, you had to put up a big boy score last week. But any general thoughts as far as week 7? A lot of injuries. A lot of them we don't have to deal with, actually, because a lot of the injuries are not on the main slate that, you guys will be going through as far as your season-long stuff with Mike Williams, Big Mike. Well, actually, they're not even playing this week. No Chiefs, no Chargers, no Mahomes, no Herbert. And Njoku's not playing. Well, he's not on the slate. Lazard's not in the slate. The Breece Hall injury obviously was terrible. We'll talk about the Jets soon enough. But, yeah, what do you have to say as far as week number 7 before we dive in and break down week 8?
Ezekiel Elliott also got there. But really, I would say since I was on the side that thought it was sharp to get off of Josh Jacobs for Devontae Adams leverage, maybe go to Rich instead because that sharp pivot did not work out.
I think Jacobs was like somewhere around 50% ownership in the Millionaire Maker. And general rules are like you're supposed to want to be below that, but not last week. What do you have, Rich, as far as your week 7 analysis?
Yeah, I mean, not even week 7, week 1 through 7, the chalk has been dominant. Really kind of the meta has been to play the extreme chalk and just kind of try to get creative with like some one-offs around it, right? Like that's been kind of the meta instead of just fading the chalk. The Million Maker basically played they had like almost 200% cumulative ownership, but they just threw McCall Hardman in there. That's how then you win. It's nice when the
touchdowns, right?
2 rushing touchdowns. To be fair, I think that the pop pass should count as rushing touchdowns as well. Any pass behind the line of scrimmage should count as a run now in modern NFL, boosting these stats, trying to find ways to get Aaron Rodgers more short touchdown passes.
Mahomes too. Mahomes gets those a couple of those a year, it seems like. I feel like Allen maybe gets a pop pass on occasion. Look at you wanting to steal away fantasy points from people. That's a hot button issue. I feel like that's a contrarian take. You on board with that, John?
I actually agree. But remember, this is the contrarian show. If it goes behind the line of scrimmage, it's a rushing touchdown. And also, don't watch Red Zone. Those are the tips you get from the Pick 6.
You're going to lose in that one. Any sort of poll. The people love their Red Zone. And I, for the record, to be clear, we've had this argument before. Like, I'm team Red Zone all day long. I almost turned Red Zone off for Kansas City Buffalo a couple weeks ago. I almost did it. I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to leave Red Zone. But if I was, that's what I would do it for.
I was going to ask what is even on Red Zone nowadays since no teams score? Like if Bills don't play Sunday afternoon, what teams even pop up in the Red Zone? Josh Jacobs getting carries?
It's so sad. And it's funny you say that because we don't talk slate dynamics a ton on this show. It's kind of sort of a first look, but it's an 11 gamer, right? We're without 3 teams, the Thursday night, the Sunday night, the Monday night, no Green Bay, no Buffalo again, like you guys said. That's kind of a bummer. We don't have to deal with Tom Brady and his 1 touchdown. Denver and Jacksonville, good Lord, we hate England so much. We're sending him Russ Wilson and the Jags again. Why do we keep doing this to them? And it's going to sell out, I'm sure. No Mahomes, no Chargers as well. But, Rich, the 4 o'clock game, the player minutes remaining, the PMR. Look at the 4 o'clock game specifically. We got 4, right? Let's get excited about Tennessee, Houston, the Giants.
I'm excited about that one.
Is there faux excitement or real excitement?
I'm excited about Giants Seahawks too.
There's some potential. It's super, super early, but potential weather in that game. It's Seattle. We'll see. Stay tuned. That's the most exciting one, probably. It's weird to see the Rams. You might have this, Rich. You have every single stat in the world. Like, when was the last time the Rams were in a 42.5 total for a game? Like, that low. I feel like that's like...
the last time they played.
Was it really? Oh, they were a big favorite, weren't they? Is that...
Yeah, I think it's the Panthers.
That doesn't count. What was their team total less than 21?
This is life in 2022 NFL, though. Like, all these totals, like, we're living in the low 40s every week. We rarely push 50, but maybe once or twice a week. And it's typically with a team that has an implied total of like 30 themselves. So, yeah, we're living there this year. Remember last year, we were like, you'd have multiple teams a week that were in the 30s, like their own individual implied team totals. But No, not this year. Not in the era of the penalty and cover 2 and quarterbacks that can't move in the pocket. It's rough, man. It's rough out there.
Yeah, but now that Sam Ehlinger is playing, is that going to change things? He's starting for the Colts. We were talking about Sam Ehlinger pre-show. 4K on
we'll
DFS.
talk about Sam Ehlinger, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the other 4:00 game, by the way. I'm there for Heineke Ehlinger. I don't know about you guys. But
what a classic 1v1, paying up for Jalen Hurts or going all the way down that Stoneman rushing floor.
Listen, we got to get to Derrick Henry somehow.
That's it. That's true.
It's a really interesting conversation as far as quarterback because it drops off really, really quickly.
If you're not playing running backs against the Houston Texans at this point, like I don't know what you do, man. You just got to do it.
Josh Jacobs in his presser last week said he felt like he went 4 or 5 yards at a time, untouched often, and it's true. Next Gen Stats charted him with a career high in yards before contact. He just ran untouched the entire second half.
Through 6 games, the Texans have allowed the top score or the RB2 in 4 of 6 games played on the week.
So is this a spoiler for later? You guys like Derrick Henry? You think he's going to run the football pretty well this week?
He's 10K on FanDuel, and I think on DraftKings he's 8 something. So
8-4,
I think everyone's aware. There's no secret here. The big dog doesn't sneak up on anyone. Oh, and he's gone over 200 yards rushing in 3 straight games against the Texans.
Over 200 yards in 3 straight games?
Yeah.
That's just rushing?
Yeah.
Okay. And we may see
which has nothing to do with this Sunday, but hell, it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah. I wonder what his projected total is. I'm curious what the blitz has for that. I'm going to set the over under like as a median score.
What's his line? I don't have access to the book. What's his line on DraftKings or FanDuel's book? His rushing yards. What's his rushing yard prop?
That's a good question. Or maybe even our sponsor Thrive probably has it as well. But I'm going to guess it's somewhere around like 124. Is that too high? I don't know.
If Rich wants to, if y'all want to open the first game, I'll look up prop really quick.
If this is your first time here, it's probably not, but this is how we do the show. It's called the Pick 6 Show. We focus on 3 main games. We break it down from all sorts of angles, and then we run it back and give our favorite plays that were not in those 3 main games. At quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. We're going to have to find some at tight end this week, boys. There's no Kelsey and there's no Anders, so I don't know, man. John Travolta and Pulp Fiction.gif. But, yeah, first game on board, and we picked John picked, and rightfully so, because the 4th highest game as far as total this week is that new Giants and Seattle game. It's 44.5, but we got 3 games with the 3 highest totals and all in domes. And, we're going to be talking about, like, Miami-Detroit is kind of a chalky game. It's going to be a wild week. It really is interesting. I'm really curious to see how the build's going to go. And obviously, news flow will adjust as the week progresses, but we'll do the best we can as far as tackling this slate on a Wednesday night. Very first game here. Rich, I'll have you pull up whatever you have as far as Henry. But the number 1 game here, John, is Arizona. We got the Cardinals in Minnesota. 48.5 is the total. Minnesota was a 3.5-point favorite. Dealer's choice. You want to start with the Cardinals? Or you want to start with Minnesota? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, we can take it any direction. We can start with the Vikings since they've got the 26-point, team total here. They're at home coming off of a bye. They've been a pretty fruitful offense so far, and they've got that kind of thin target tree, right? So we do like that as well. I think the interesting guy here, probably the most interesting guy, and not from like a positive stance, I don't think so, is just what to do with is Dalvin Cook on the slate, because again, high game total, a large favorite at home, typically a spot we would look to play, right? But Dalvin Cook's kind of like in no man's land in terms of, fantasy this year. He's kind of like not really getting there as an RB1, but he's just productive enough. You see, he's pacing to have his career low in receptions per game right now. He got there with the long touchdown against the Dolphins, but, not really catching the ball like we might think. And the Vikings really are kind of mixing in Alexander Madison a little bit more than kind of we would like. And then also the Vikings are the pass heaviest team in the red zone. So it's kind of a tricky spot here because typically we would look at this spot and say, yep, we're just going to get that running back in, especially when it's a guy that has a ceiling like Dalvin Cook has. But right, so far the ceiling, he really kind of, hasn't been there. And Arizona's been pretty good against running backs. They're 5th in rushing points allowed per game to running backs. So Dalvin Cook, I think, is one of the more interesting inflection points on the slate, in particular in this game.
John, feel free to jump in and talk about Cook. And if you found anything as far as Henry props, we gave you enough time to scramble for it. I did find his projection in the blitz, and like I said, I don't know how many tells, but I felt it was a little low almost, just knowing what we know. But what'd you come up there, John?
I have no props. They have not released yet on a Wednesday night. I was looking at Thrive Fantasy, our friends. But what does the blitz have right now?
What would you guess?
Projections, usually median, even so. Gosh, how safe do I want to be? 92.5.
All right, Rich, you want to take the over, the under?
Over, I'll say it's like 108.
And you guys middled it, 106.
He was much closer. Okay.
Yeah, he went over, though, for doing
Price is Right rules, man.
It's implied unless otherwise noted, I feel like. John, talk about Cook, and then, of course, there's Jefferson, there's Thielen. Do we want to consider a guy like Cousins as well today or this week against the Cardinals?
The bye week, I think, helps Cook. That's why I keep coming around to the idea of playing him pending his ownership, since we saw in the first 2 games, 5.5 targets per game, around on 71% of dropbacks, suffers that shoulder injury week 3, and has been limited basically in the passing game since, I would think, due to that injury. Just 5 total targets, actually, since week 3. And so maybe with the bye, a full 2 weeks of rest, maybe they get him back to a pass catching back as well, which is where we're going to catch the ceiling. Like Rich mentioned, the Cardinals are pretty good against the run. Also, it's worth noting for Kirk Cousins, just a tough spot. Like, yes, we can still play Justin Jefferson, but honestly, like the Cardinals defense, after they got scorched by Mahomes, they got a little healthier in week 2. And since then have been a serviceable defense, understanding when to blitz and when to keep it back. No quarterback until Andy Dalton last week had gone over 260 yards against him. They totaled the 5 quarterbacks before just 3 total passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Dalton, of course, got there in the end with 360 and 4 touchdowns, but also because he threw those 2 pick sixes and they were down by 3 scores early on. So we can also maybe say the Cardinals passing defense is stronger than we believe, even limiting Geno Smith and Jalen Hurts before then to no passing touchdowns. So I'm between Cook and Jefferson, and maybe there's a reason to just not play them, honestly, in this slate.
What do you think of the Arizona side, John? We saw Hopkins come back. He played basically every single snap, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere 90 percentile. A whopping 14 targets. They desperately needed him, obviously, the absence of Brown. Kyler, by the way, raw points-wise, is the second highest projected quarterback this week, and a week that has thin quarterbacks. He's in a dome as well, probably playing a little comeback here. He's got some legs, too. I think it's an interesting pairing. Do you want to start with Hopkins? I assume you were impressed his first game back?
Yeah, and Kyler Murray's still not running as much as we like, but still his 3rd highest total with 7 carries on the year. Didn't need to get there. That was a game script. They weren't really needing him in the second half. But overall, like Rondale Moore, it started out great after that first catch, thinking, okay, like Rondale Moore will still be involved underneath in this offense. But then what we saw was DeAndre Hopkins hammered, as you mentioned, a 48% target share and moved to the slot for his highest slot snap since last year, 54% of his routes coming from the slot. In a concerted approach, I wonder how much after 10 days Robbie Anderson is caught up, because maybe since Rondale Moore only played 9 snaps from the slot last week, I do wonder if maybe that puts Anderson and Hopkins on the field and then puts Moore back into the slot where he has a higher floor. Also, even though they used him creatively, like naturally we can say, well, Hopkins won't carry a 48% target share every single game after seeing his fewest targets per game since 2013, his rookie year with the Texans last season. And so Hopkins is, yes, an amazing play, but I also think it might be worth taking a chance in larger field tournaments on a Rondale Moore.
Oh, man. Rich, if Robbie Anderson's anywhere close to a full go, oh, man, 18% of snaps his first game, like a little bit of time to get acclimated to the offense here. What is there? There's plenty of room here as far as snaps. Where would you guess his snap count is, or is this, there's a lot of volatility to it, obviously? I'm just asking mostly because he's 4K on DK.
No, I think I would expect him to almost be kind of a full-time player in that offense once he's up. I mean, remember they played on Thursday, and I think they traded for him on Monday. So, like, there was really no shot for him to play. And we saw the same thing with McCaffrey, right? And McCaffrey's a running back where you can just, there has to be some plays in the playbook he can run, right? And he hardly played on Sunday, and he was there for a day. It's just hard for these guys to kind of get into the system and get going. So I would expect Robbie Anderson to be on the field. I would expect it to be Hopkins, Anderson, and Rondale Moore as the primary three. Sometimes they'll go 10 personnel, and then we might get a guy like Dortch on the field, or if they retain AJ Green, we'll see. But basically, they are done with AJ Green. Like they've seen enough of this guy. And it's a bummer because obviously AJ Green's had a phenomenal career, and we don't want to see anyone kind of go out the way he's looked this season. Because last year he was kind of okay. He was, it wasn't embarrassing. I do. Right? Yeah, it's hard at receiver, man, especially when you think about this era. He'll be close. I'll have to dig in because there are a lot of receivers from this era, man, that are going to have to probably fight to get in for sure. But yeah, I think Rondo goes back to playing in the slot. I think that was more of a game-sensitive thing. What you would like to see, though, is Cliff just finally see that, like, oh, hey, moving my primary, receiver around is actually good for him because, we didn't see this the last 2 years with DeAndre Hopkins. We didn't see it with Marquise Brown at all the first 6 weeks of the season. So hopefully they get some religion here, but it is Cliff. So, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you look at DeAndre Hopkins' 2020 season because his numbers were depressed, but also he did play hurt largely the entire season. So like he's had a bunch of time off. He looked fresh. He's one of those guys that also too, like he's never going to really get like a ton of separation. He never was at Houston, even in his apex. He's got those huge hands, man, those mitts, he catches those back shoulder balls. Some of the timing was off a little bit last Thursday, but that's to be expected. But I mean, there's still like a range of outcomes where DeAndre Hopkins is like a legit like top 8 receiver like the rest of the season. So just something to kind of like monitor and see what they do. But we want to see him keep moving around the formation because that's kind of what really opened things up last week. Minnesota's pretty interesting because they should be due some regression. And obviously Kyler should be due regression as well. I mean, he's got a 2.5% touchdown rate. His career rate is 4.1%. So he's, almost 2% lower. You expect some regression to come along the way. Minnesota's getting beat up through the pass. I mean, they're allowing 8.4 yards per pass attempt. That's 29th in the NFL. They're allowing a 69% completion rate. That's 29th. 12.2 yards per completion. That's 29th. But the one saving grace is they've only allowed a 2.9% touchdown rate, which is 7th in the league. When you add up their other peripheral stats, it should be higher. Like teams should be throwing more touchdowns against them. So maybe we can double dip on regression both ways with Kyler and the Vikings defense. Definitely in the range of outcomes here as well.
Is anybody excited by Zach Ertz? Like, I don't think I guess he's playable. He's in the pool. Tight ends kind of stink this week. And
I do like Thielen in this game.
Okay. Talk about Adam Thielen.
Well, so one of the things Vance Joseph has done this season is just like they've emptied the chamber, man. Like they blitz at the 3rd highest rate. Like they know they've had a ton of injuries in the back end. So like they just send the dogs, man. Like they do a lot of zone blitzing. Well, and Adam Thielen has really crazy splits against the blitz and when teams don't blitz. He has 24% of the team targets against the blitz, 46% of the Vikings air yards, as opposed to 18.5% of the team targets and 24% of the team air yards. And against the blitz, Thielen has been targeted on 22.6% of his routes versus 16% when teams don't blitz. So obviously you're not going to play him in cash or anything, but like if you're going to stack this game, does anyone like to click the button on Adam Thielen?
Not really. Not in a couple of years, right?
Everyone will probably go to Irv Smith much
yeah, that's right.
Much quicker than Adam Thielen. Even just the last everyone saw in a primetime game, first of all, that Saints tight ends, including Taysom Hill, had 3 receiving touchdowns. So there's that. But also, like, even in playing a tough slate of tight ends, Kelsey in week 1 went over 120 and a touchdown. Darren Waller, when he's healthy, had 50 and a touchdown. Tyler Higbee got 60. A couple weeks ago, Noah Fant had 6 catches against them. So there's a reason to play Irv Smith. But honestly, for that reason, it's probably why we should pivot if we have a chance to Thielen instead.
Do want to say what's up to those that are watching us live on the YouTube. Not a lot of us watch us live. Most of us catch us on the replay. Kindly hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications. I do see Richie Smalls in chat asking about What are we doing about the Cardinals running backs here, John? According to the Twitter machine, James Conner was seen participating in practice on Wednesday. He's got ribs. If Conner plays, are we interested? How excited we are about James Conner?
We are not excited. If Conner plays, we don't know his actual, like if he's at full speed, and we don't know if they trust Eno Benjamin enough to keep him involved, which I think they would, at least in Conner's first game back. And then we have to question the ceiling from these guys anyhow. So I genuinely just don't think it's a situation we would worry about if he comes back.
That's kind of where I'm at right now on a Wednesday night. I don't think it's terribly sexy. You got anything there, Rich, as far as the backfield for Arizona, or it's more, I mean, if we're playing Arizona, it's more likely to be through the air?
Yeah, for the most part, especially because it's so muddy, because Conner wasn't good on his own. You know, I mean, he had one top 24 scoring week on the season, and it was the game he scored a touchdown. So I would anticipate that if Conner's back and it is Eno, and I think Darrell Williams also practiced, it gets a little muddy, but I would assume that the high value touches would still go to Conner, but Eno's been their best running back like so far. So it's kind of like one of those damned if you do things. Like Eno's probably the better play and he'll probably run hotter, but if they get inside the 5, like, are they going to, they pulled him for Keontae Ingram last week, multiple times. So yeah, it's really tough to say, and I'm excited to play any of those guys.
And one of Ingram's carries inside the 5, was not positive game script. It was actually when it was still competitive, they pulled Eno off the field.
Got anything else this game, boys, or moving on? I think we're moving on, right?
Justin Jefferson's good at football.
Did we even mention him? Like, obviously, it's just yeah, he's great. If you can get him in your lineups, by all means, have at it. He's awesome.
Zach Ertz also now, it goes back to last year, but in 5 games with DeAndre Hopkins is averaging 4 fewer targets per game and a 14% target share compared to 21%. So I don't think I'm on Ertz in this game personally.
I mean, tight end stinks this week, and I'm not excited about Ertz. It's just, the highest projected tight end this week. I'm just pulling it up right now. Just raw points. Who do you got, Rich? Who's your highest projected raw points? Yes. DK scoring.
I mean, it's got to be Killer Goddard, right?
Yeah, it's Goddard by like a point and change. It's Goddard at 13-ish, and then Higbee and Pitts.
that whole one half of Goddard is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other part of the conversation. Like, how long does Philly actually step on the gas, right, against Pittsburgh? And we saw it at the beginning of the year where they're just blowing people out, and he's going to chill in the second half. All right, game 2 is Vegas at the Saints. The Saints are getting 1.5 at home in the Superdome. It's still called the Superdome? I think it is. Is it sponsored by somebody? Not sure.
It'll always be the Superdome dust, even if it's not.
It's got to be a sponsor, right?
Yeah. I think it's the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, maybe. Does that sound right?
It is. Minus that, it is the Superdome, minus that one time Hulk Hogan hosted WrestleMania and called it the Silver Dome whenever he came out.
Nice. Well, and the Silver Dome was Detroit.
Right. He heard about it too. He got booed.
Isn't that where he slammed Andre in Detroit? Or am I wrong? Am I getting that incorrect?
There
was a WrestleMania in Detroit, I'm pretty sure. Many, many years ago.
I should know that. I don't know that.
I think that's where he slammed Andre, but I could be wrong. We got to hit all the sports here, not just football. This is just how it goes down. Andy Dalton was announced the quarterback because of performance. Apparently, Winston is healthy. I mean, I gave like the Big Lebowski sort of gif. Like, what? I was reading that and I could not. I watched a lot of basketball at night, so I didn't really see how Andy Dalton. I knew he threw like 6 touchdowns with the 2 pick sixes. Did he look good? Is that your best chance to win, no. Andy Dalton, Rich, or what am I missing here?
No, maybe. I mean, because he did the Jameis. It was the Jameis, right? You threw multiple pick sixes, created your own game script to go hair on fire, and then ended up throwing for 300 yards. He threw for 170 yards in the fourth quarter of that game because nothing mattered. The Cardinals didn't care. Throw all the 6-yard passes to Juwan Johnson you want. Go down the field. They didn't care. But what is interesting, and this is a great thing to talk about too with Andy Dalton, because apparently Jameis is healthy enough to play. Like, if he does that again, does he get pulled? Because this is totally a spot we would be interested in playing any of the Saints quarterbacks. Listen, the Raiders have allowed a top 8 fantasy scorer in all 6 games they played. Every single game. And that includes guys like Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson, and Davis Mills last week. Like, they are just giving away quarterback points at the rate the Houston Texans are giving away running back points. But like, what if you play Dalton and he throws 2 picks again, and they're just like, well, shit, man, we're going to Jameis now. Like, I mean, it's like that has to exist in the range of outcomes, right? Like, does he not make it through? Because I remember this like happening with Jameis. Like, when I was at Roto World, I used to do a morning show at Josh Norris, and like Roto World pulled the clip and sent it. I was like, oh, Jameis is like a lock to have like 25 points today. And Jameis threw like 3 interceptions in the first quarter and got pulled. And I just got dragged like by like the nation. Like they just had their way with me. Because this is a great spot for Andy Dalton. But damn, if he throws a couple picks, like, does he make it?
The best correlation play back in the day with Jameis was like stacking Jameis and playing the defense against him. This is beautiful.
It's gonna be like a couple weeks ago when Skylar Thompson was starting, but there was a Peter Overzet found a team in the top 10 of the SPY that stacked Teddy Bridgewater instead. It's gonna be like that. Someone's gonna play Jameis in the millie and take it down.
Is this a loser leaves town game? The Saints are 2-5. The Raiders are 2-4. I mean, like, you know, not a must win. You know, we're still week 8, but feels like
if the Raiders were in the NFC, they'd have probably 1 loss.
Yeah.
This is good. The Raiders are legitimately like a decent team. Like they've lost a bunch of close games. They're first in the NFL in scoring rate per drive. Like the Las Vegas Raiders are.
They would be the best team in the NFC South.
I mean, yeah, they're just in the wrong conference, man.
Yeah,
this year at least in context of this year.
And I'm wrong. The Saints are only 1 game behind Tampa, so like they're alive. They can lose.
The Panthers are 1 game back.
Panthers are 1 game back. That's the story.
What a disaster. Yeah, John, jump in here as far as Dalton. I think that's live, but like I don't know if they want to get going back and forth and playing a different quarterback. But like once they move off of Dalton, the Jameis are kind of married to him, I think, but I feel like that's the better upside play. I don't know. Well, I'm just some guy on the couch watching the games. But, John, your take as far as Dalton and spread out to his receiving options.
The injuries, too, are what should help us out in this game. I have no idea if Dalton gets benched. Could happen. Definitely could happen. But the fact that the Saints have been so banged up on defense is why they're allowing 33 points per game in Dalton's 4 starts, which means we think we're going to get volume in this one. Dalton the past 2 weeks as well, 39.5 attempts per game. So we just want the volume. And we already talked about Juwan Johnson, but we also know, like, of course, you know, with a 23.5% target share, the ball really only goes to Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, if Dalton's under center, and Juwan Johnson. So it's actually a concerted target tree to play here as well, which is why I wish we had more confidence in the quarterback.
Is Kamara going to score a touchdown this week? Is it going to happen?
Never.
He's due, right? Taysom Hill has siphoned, I'm sure, several of them. I feel like he's gotten close, but yeah. Eventually.
No, he's like varsity blues, man. He's got to score from 20 out. Like he's got to get it. Like they're bringing it in. Lance Arbor hitting Taysom Hill like inside the 5. Like it's happening repeatedly.
Yeah, Billy Bob sets a nice block for him.
Great spot for him though, and he'll be sneaky if like the Saints do get some of these other guys back because. I mean, we've got a very small sample where the Saints, like Daigle alluded to, like all these guys have been healthy. There's been just 36 passing plays where Kamara, Olave, Michael Thomas have all been on the field this season. Wow. But Kamara has a 19% target share, and he was targeted on 22% of his routes on those snaps. Granted, like I said, very small sample. I mean, he's involved. Like he's doing the old Kamara thing. It's just the touchdowns, like are just the thing, man. It's just holding him back. Over 100 total yards each of the past 3 weeks, 18 plus touches in every game. The Raiders have been really beat up by running backs through the air and on the ground. Like these dual purpose backs have really hurt them. So, I mean, he's in play again, but like you need those tuds in fantasy football, man. I mean, you have a hard time beating some of these chalky 30-point PPR running backs when you can't get in the box.
And when Taysom Hill's 6,500 on FanDuel, that's probably the pivot.
This is my weekly check-in. Where is Taysom Hill in your season-long tight end rankings? Where do you have him, John?
He is still 3rd in points per game. My weekly rankings, I start him over Kyle Pitts every week, like you have to right now. So I think that's where we're at. It's bad. It's bad in the streets.
It's so brutal. Yeah.
Every week, man. I go to slot him, and I want to fade him, but it is what it is, man. It's terrible. Like, what are you supposed to do? Just play Hayden Hurst every week? Like, what's the difference, right? Like
2 for 20 yards. You got to get that. That's gonna put you over.
Don't hate the player. Hate the players.
Yes,
all of them.
So I did this really quickly because I had to refresh my parameters for optimal lineups on a Wednesday night, and Kamara on DK and 38% of them, Jacobs and 83% on the other side. They still didn't correct this, right? 7.5K.
Not enough.
That's just too cheap, right?
It's ridiculous.
He's at 30 PPR points in 3 straight games. The last back to do that was Todd Gurley in 2018. He's thumping the field these last 3 weeks. He's getting catches every game. I mean, he now leads the NFL in share of backfield touches. He's second in the NFL in success rate per run, second in rate of runs to go for a first down or touchdown. I mean, the guy is sizzling. He's absolutely sizzling. And this Saints run D is not the old Saints run D, like that had that magical streak that I used to just lean on and bring up for like 3 years of not allowing a 100-yard rusher. They're getting out here getting smoked by Benjamin and Keontae Ingram. Like, yeah, this ain't the old Saints run D either.
You got anything to add there, John, as far as Jacobs? I assume you like him as well.
I'm not suggesting we do it again, but it is a good matchup, assuming Marshawn Lattimore's out again for Devontae Adams, because where the Saints are getting smoked is the boundary where Adams just ran 66% of his routes from this year. Saints allowing the 4th most receiving yards per game and a touchdown rate of 5.5% to opposing boundary receivers. So it really is a very good spot for Adams. Again, I can't guarantee you I have the courage to do it again, but maybe. We'll see by Sunday morning.
That's what I did. I did that plenty last week. And if I was just playing the what if Adams gets the 2 or 3 touchdowns and catches the deep ball, and he was on his way. It's just that Houston didn't punch back, right?
They had bizarro halves. It looked fine in the first half, and then Jacob ended us in the second half.
Yeah, there was definitely the Mortal Kombat finish. Walker did that too. Eckler did that too. Like all the chalk running backs had that killer instinct, Mortal Kombat. Like it's all over in case any hope. If you avoided the chalk, even Zeke was crushed. I had plenty of Zeke, and he still couldn't compete raw points wise with the guys that were incredibly owned as well.
And they all had 30 points.
Yeah, and
it's the quarterback law. Right? We talk about the quarterbacks every week, and you're like, oh man, my cheap guy got me 20, and it's but my other guy got me 35. Yeah.
Good luck making up the difference there. As far as we don't really know, right? As far as tight end for Waller, we're not really sure. I think I said, did I practice today? Is that practice? Okay. 5.4 on DK, which is theoretically a good price, but he hasn't really done it this year. He's been in and out of the lineup, right? This is a good spot for tight ends, Rich, traditionally against New Orleans.
No, pretty bad. They haven't allowed a touchdown to tight end, 5.1 yards per target. That's second in the NFL. Not the greatest run out to spots. And remember, Waller, there's 2 games before he got hurt, he had 6 catches for 46 yards. And this goes back to last year as well. When he was in and out of the lineup, the performances weren't really high. But now not only does he now have to contend with Devontae Adams, but Josh Jacobs is a legitimate thing now. So that's part of the offense that really wasn't part of things that Waller had to deal with either. And me too, guys coming off these long injuries, I'm pretty skeptical of anyways. So I won't push back on anyone adding any type of tight end that has upside in this slate to their lineup, but he's not a guy I'm really looking at right now with any type of excitement.
I want to push back on Renfro. I think he's just kind of gutting it with the hip. It's either that or he's been superseded by Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is on the field for every single snap. Adams on the field for every single snap. And I thought Renfro was a slot guy. I'm not a hand in a dirt guy, Rich, but is Hollins playing in the slot? Because they're only playing 3 receivers. And Renfro, is that because of his injury or he's just behind Hollins down the depth chart and that's that?
Yeah, no, he's just pure slot guy, and they love Mac Hollins in the run game. And what are they doing well right now? They run that rock. They love Big Mac. He's a coach's guy, man. He plays special teams. He's a run blocker. The coaches love those guys like Mac Hollins.
5. He's on the field for every single snap. I don't hate it.
Well, we already blew our one time with Mac Hollins, Dean.
We hit the quota. Well, yeah, he's Hall of Fame, right? I feel
He
like
was
he's in the DFS
40%, 3,200 Matt Collins is blowing your one time. Yes.
If you don't pick your one time, which by the way, can I derail the show? We've had this conversation in other shows, and we have time. Sure, why not? Do you have?
They're really 4 good games this week. It's fine. Talk all you want.
John. Okay, you know when people say one time, I give you this one time. Usually, like you're well positioned. If it hits, you get yourself $100,000 win or something like that. Do you only have one time, like a one time, your entire DFS life? That's it. And if it hits, it's over. Or does it recycle every new season, every calendar year, one for every sport? What are the one-time rules?
That's a terrific question. Well, isn't it once per? I would say once per lifetime, but I've already cheated on that. Or because once per season is too liberal. Like we can't be doing that. We need to bring it back a little bit. Once per sport maybe actually is better.
Rich, you got a thought? Like you're very passionate about like your short little pitch passes. Did you have any passion behind the one-time thought?
No, not really. I haven't really given it a lot of thought myself. Yeah, I don't know. I'm stumped on that one. I got nothing.
I was trying to see if the chat had a thought in this, but the chat just unbeknownst to nothing, Herb Smith on a rocket ship is the last thing I see in the chat. And then somebody wants to know Jason Hill or Harrison Bryant, which
are we using our one time on Herb Smith this week?
I am not. I am sorry. If I'm allowed to have one a week, one time, then maybe.
I just searched my own Twitter name and one time, and in the last 2 years, I've used it 3 times. Once was last year when we were 28th place in the main event. For the final week, our team went backwards. The second time was when Aaron Rodgers was about to retire, and I scooped up a couple of premier Jordan Love rookie cards. Aaron Rodgers has not retired. I don't know if you heard that.
Like, what was the feeling in that one time?
I still have Jordan Love rookie cards. And then the third time was whenever the Browns could clinch a playoff spot. And they did run over the Steelers. So, okay, that's fine. I support Cleveland.
I feel like I used all my one times on just trying to will like naked QB bootlegs into existence. Like just one time run a naked boot, it'll work. Like
rather than letting you pick the parameters of one time, we need to just make sure you pick better one times.
Is that what you're the guy screaming on the 2-yard line, just run a naked boot and you're gonna be able to
Oh God, yes, it's the Sex Panther of NFL plays. Like I mean
60% of the time.
Yeah, I mean there's a YouTube clip, you guys can look this up because no one's as old as me, of Steve Bono running a naked boot for 80 yards. And he fools everyone, the cameraman, like no one is even in the screen. There's a Peyton Manning naked boot that's real famous. He's done it twice. Obviously, there's the Broncos one, and then he did it with the Colts. And he actually would have ran it in, but it was like the ice of the game, so he just slid down it like the 2. It was Colts versus Raiders. But yeah, listen, the naked boot is like a foolproof play. Like it's
like the old school 4th and 1 Tom Brady. It just
yeah.
If I had to guess, I don't have it on. I'd have to look it up real quick. I'm assuming you know off the top of your head. I would guess Daniel Jones probably leads the league in naked boot, right? It has to be Jones or Mariota.
I don't think True Media tracks naked boots, but I'll see if I can find it. I can pull up sneaks, but
this show is literally just us finding things out behind the scenes during the show.
I mean, to be fair, the Saints Raiders game is pretty fun though.
It is, yes. Yes. Andy Dalton in a week where
again, back.
Again, if Jalen Hurts fails, who wins the slate? That's the question. And the answer is anyone. Could be Allinger. It could be Tua, who we're about to talk about. Could be Jared Goff if we get everyone back. Like it could be anyone. Maybe it couldn't be Jared Goff. It could be anyone else.
I love the Carr Adams call though, because like the Saints are just so banged up. The Saints also are dead last the NFL in pressure rate, pressuring opposing quarterbacks. You talk about missing Marshawn Lattimore. They're just getting killed, man. So I mean, yeah, I like that because obviously Jacobs is going to be popular again. They didn't pump up his price enough. I have no pushback, but I do like the potential overlooked of Adams against this run. I mean, look at the past 3 weeks. DK Metcalf 5 for 81 and a touchdown. Tyler Lockett 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase 132 and 2 touchdowns. Hopkins had 10 catches for 100 yards last week. I mean, and Adams, it's not like we even have to like fudge anything. We can start with Adams, the player, first, because look at what he's doing. He's got eight catches last week, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns the week before that, 9 for 100 the week before that. Like, you're getting an absolute like alpha player in like a really advantageous spot and where he's leveraged. So, I mean, it's hard to push back on it.
So a Carr, Adams, Kamara, something like that would be like your favorite.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then but what we get from the Saints, like we just have to see, like, does Michael Thomas come back? Does Jarvis Landry come back? Because Olave's like, they're moving him around too. I mean, he's catching balls in the slot too. He caught the Taysom ball in the slot, against Byron Murphy, put him on skates last week. I mean, he's averaging 11 targets per game the past 5 weeks. Olave's definitely in play as well. We just need to see who's healthy on the Saints side of the ball by the time we get to the weekend.
You want to talk about pulse check of Taysom Hill, Dean, like pulse check of what the hell to do with Michael Thomas, because you can't draft him. I mean, you can't drop him. It's like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Like in deep 12-team leagues, you literally just have to hold, and like holding is also useless. So you just sit there pissed off about the fact you drafted him.
And he had 2 touchdowns. He scored the first 2 weeks. He played.
That was fun. The fourth quarter was fun.
Yeah, and we had that for us. I don't know why the Saints didn't put him or Landry on injured reserve. Like, here we are 4 weeks. Here we are 4 weeks from everything, and these guys might not play again.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it's just that they probably didn't know the severity. Is that possible, or they were optimistic? And
but you also have to have some foresight. Like, when you see you have a Thursday games on your schedule, right? Like, when you see these things, you got to have some foresight, man. The guy's probably not going to play on a short week, so that's an extra week. Like, use the roster spot, right? Like, I don't really understand, especially if these guys don't end up playing in this week. It feels just like a real botched opportunity from the top down perspective.
All right, let's move on.
I feel like the Saints have done a lot of those errors in the last 12 months because they do not have a first-round pick next year.
It's promoted Andy Dalton because for performance reasons. But, what happened to their first-round pick? What am I missing?
The Eagles have it.
For what?
They traded up to get Olave.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, maybe it wasn't part of the Olave. They traded up twice, right? They traded up. With the Eagles.
I think it was. They traded up with that pick for Olave. Yes.
And they traded up pre-draft too, though. Like, they traded up pre-draft, I think, with the Eagles, and then during the draft they traded up again with the pick they acquired, right?
Yes.
Because they had 2 first rounds. God damn. Mickey Loomis just never surrenders, man. This dude's never gonna, like, there's always money in the banana stand at Mickey Loomis. Like,
meanwhile you have Rosie in Philadelphia now, like, just swapping mid-round picks for, like, Robert Quinn had 18.5 sacks last year, and he just sends a 4th-round pick for him for a team that's ready to win the Super Bowl right now with just a cupcake walk into at least like the NFC Championship with 2 probably top 10 picks next year. Like, that's an organization being built right now. And to think they took Roseman out of the office for a little bit for Chip Kelly instead.
Is that guy a legit difference maker, the D lineman they got, or the guy edge rush? Was he edge rusher, D lineman? What is he for the Bears? Now he's in Philadelphia.
Edge. I think it makes a lot of sense. That's where the Eagles have always prioritized correctly, is their trenches. Also for the Bears, like, he was their oldest defender at 32 years old. Like, they're just running a bunch of young guys out there and letting them develop. And honestly, like, their young guys are playing really well right now in their secondary. So I think it makes sense for both teams, actually.
Yeah, and maybe that makes life a little bit easier if it becomes a Tony Pollard week, taking on the Bears as well too with Zeke.
Listen, like, if Tony Pollard was playing the Bucks, it would still be Tony Pollard week. Everyone is going to play Tony Pollard. Does not matter what we say. Doesn't matter how we analyze it. Tony Pollard's getting played.
Do we think Zeke plays on a Wednesday night? Which way are you leaning?
Sounds ominous right now.
Yeah.
One of the beats seemed pessimistic. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it seemed the vibe all around everything today was that, like, we're at least going to get a week. And, honestly, they should, because we lived through this last year, right? Like, Zeke openly talked about, playing hurt last year, and he was bad. Like, and it hurt the team because they kept giving him the football. Let him get right for a couple weeks. You see how well Tony Pollard's playing. Like, get Zeke right. I actually don't think Zeke has played bad this year either. I think they're using him the way he should be used, but I think Zeke's done his job relatively well this year.
All right, Miami Dolphins at Detroit. Detroit's getting 3.5 points at home. 51.5 is the total. That's the biggest number on the board. I want to say Swift was a full participant in practice today on a Wednesday, so that seems pretty optimistic. Amon-Ra, of course, didn't finish last game as well. Rich, how's your boy, the Sun God? What are we projecting as far as his chances of playing? Are we leaning one way or the other? At least Wednesday. Who knows? We'll see.
I mean, this is where we are in the NFL. Amon-Ra leaves the game with a concussion, but didn't have a concussion, but can't practice until he clears concussion protocol. Quite a lot to handle here. But it's real unfortunate because the start of the year, it looked like Amon-Ra was going to pick up right where he left off last year. Is just jamming, and then he's been just really kind of snake bit the last month. He picked up the ankle injury in the middle of the Vikings game, kind of impacted him the rest of that game. Misses a week, he comes back, tries to play through it, plays limited snaps. They go on by, and then he comes out and 10 snaps into the game, he's forced out of the game again. So just kind of a real tough run out for a player that when he's been on the field has been targeted on 33% of his routes. Only Tyreek Hill has been targeted at a higher rate. But granted, now the sample size is still really small. He's also one of these low ADOT guys, 5.5 yards downfield per target. He is one of 4 wide receivers with over 100 routes run that doesn't have a target 20 yards or further downfield this season. Michael Pittman, other notable player on that list. But yeah,
17 yards still? Is that what it is? I think
What's
it's a
that?
stat you fired off. Is it 17 yards for Pittman as long as?
Yeah, so his longest target is still 17 yards. Maybe old Sam Ellinger is going to unlock him. We'll see when we get there. But yeah, listen, Amon-Ra's had just a real bad run out. The interesting thing when I looked at it this week, because I said, the Lions, they've been really terrible the past 2 weeks without the last 2 games without, DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra. And obviously they had the huge game without both those guys against Seattle. But looking at Goff splits, with Brown and St. Brown on the field this season, there's really no difference. With both those guys on the field, he only has a 57% completion rate, 6.9 yards per pass attempt, and a 5% touchdown rate. And then with those guys off the field, his completion rate's higher, his yards per attempt are higher, and his touchdown rate goes on to 4.3%. So it's not even like we can really blame those guys not being on the field for how bad the Lions have looked the past 2 weeks. Obviously, having those guys will help, but Goff just hasn't really played well either in either of these games. So we do need some punch back from the Lions, because that's been the thing the last 2 games from them, is that they're not punching back. Their defense still isn't doing squat. They're getting roasted. But the fact that they can't score any points has just let teams bunker down and do what teams are doing to the Texans. And just we're just going to pound the ball because you can't stop the run either now that we're up. So we need the Lions to really punch back, or we're going to get a lot of Raheem Mostert in this game.
Their drives in the second half against the Cowboys, remember, they go into the half with a 6-3 deficit lead. I can't even remember. Whatever the case, the score was 6-3. It's a 1-point game. And their drives in the second half finished interception, punt, fumble, interception, fumble, fumble. What a disaster. No points.
What about the home road splits for Detroit? How real are those? Obviously being in a dome is helpful. They're probably exaggerated, but you look at their splits home versus road. 6 points at Dallas, 0 at New England, 24 at Minnesota. But home versus Philly, they put up 35, 36 versus Washington, 45 versus Seattle. Is this stuff real, John, to some degree?
You caught me off guard. I'm actually not sure who they've played at home compared to the road. Rich, do you have that off the top of your head?
Yeah, they played, the Commanders, who obviously are not good at home. They obviously played the Seahawks, who are not very good defensively at home. And then, the week 1 was the Eagles, where they actually were getting just absolutely flooded, and then just kind of had a little flurry in the second half. So it's tough. Yeah, it's kind of tough to really put any stock into it. Maybe as it continues to grow. But listen, they're getting players that we know are good football players back, and inherently it makes sense that should help them.
What about the Miami side, John? Mostert looks like he's taking control of that backfield, basically 70% snaps the last 4 weeks. Tyreek's been awesome. Tyreek feels like an awesome play this week versus Detroit. I assume you agree. Tell me otherwise.
I wonder how many are just going to drag along to a double stacks again. And that's what's kind of fun because you can pick your poison against the Lions. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott had 2 touchdowns. That's all you need to know. But at the same time, like Tua hasn't thrown more than 1 touchdown in any game this year, except the week he broke the slate against the Ravens. And even last week, 60% of his passes completed in an island game for 260 yards, 1 score, 5 dropped interceptions, basically. And yet still, I bet because everyone wants to play Waddle and Tyreek, like that's where everyone goes. I still lean Tyreek. 31% of the team's targets, 11 targets per game in raw volume. But sure, you can do that. In an ugly tight end slate we've talked about, you can add in Mike Gesicki, who, the last 2 weeks has popped. I don't know, it's because Durham Smythe was injured 2 weeks ago and then got brought back and only ran 6 routes in his first game back. I don't know if it's because Cedric Wilson has basically become obsolete as the third receiver with just 14 total routes the past 2 games. But what's happened is Gesicki's run around on 73% of dropbacks the past 2 weeks and had a back-to-back season highs in target share. So also for the reason you mentioned Raheem Mostert, Mostert 70% of the team's backfield touches in 4 consecutive games, fresh off a season high in route participation as well. Like you can go any direction you want with the Dolphins offense, honestly.
Rich, Miami?
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the way from the Lions approach, it'd be interesting to see what they do here because we know Lions, we've talked about it, right? They're aggressive. They want to rush the quarterback. They want to send a lot of blitzes. They want to play a lot of man coverage. Well, the Dolphins really don't see a lot of man coverage because their guys are faster than everybody. You look at Miami, they're 23rd in the league in percent of dropbacks faced against man coverage this season, just 23%. The Lions are blitzing on 35% of their pass plays. They're playing man coverage on 44% of pass plays. And when they blitz, they're playing man coverage on 60% of their blitzes. So, I mean, if they're going to be aggressive against all this speed and this dome, like you got big run out plays here. Like we said, like teams don't blitz a lot against them, but Tyreek Hill's averaging 4.1 yards per route run against man coverage. He's being targeted 37% on 37% of his routes against man coverage. If Detroit thinks that they want to go with some man coverage against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, like be my guest. It's going to be some quick drives. So yeah, we'll love to see if the Lions want to continue to be aggressive.
All considered, Rich, you prefer Hill or Waddle? Hill on DK 8.5, Waddle 6.7.
I mean, definitely Tyreek. I mean, he's just look at the targets in like Tyreek's games. It's very similar to what AJ Brown and Devontae Smith have going, right? The other guy, the Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddles are still getting there, and they've had plenty of upside weeks. But when you look at like their targets and you follow them week to week, they're a little more volatile. But then when you look at Tyreek Hill's targets every week, they're not really moving. He's consistently getting the football. So, I mean, he already has double-digit targets, I think, in every game but 2 so far. They're moving him around. Even when Skylar Thompson was the quarterback, like they went out of their way to like find ways to get him the football behind the line of scrimmage. Like Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill has legitimately been one of like the better marriages of the offseason. Yeah,
I mean, they overspent, some would say, but they got their guy, and at least they're using him. They're getting everything they can.
He's had pretty bad touchdown luck compared to his peers. Like he's only got the 2 tuds. Like eventually he's going to start getting in the box.
Yeah. You got to love him this week. And he, I ran some optimals before the show on the fly, actually. And he's not surprisingly landing in a good bit, 3%. This is Wednesday night. And again, grain of salt, because you guys won't believe the quarterbacks that are coming up in the optimals. Well, you might believe it. We mentioned it throughout the show, or at least off air. The 4K Sam Ellinger looks useful. There's probably a floor there. We talked about his legs in college, a bunch of touchdowns, but him and Derek Carr are like the 1-2 quarterbacks that are showing up Wednesday night. Grain of salt, right? Anything else in this game, John, or shall we move on?
Maybe just onslaught it. That's it.
Yeah, the only thing here is that the only thing with the Dolphins. And we had that high run out when they played the Ravens because they were chasing points, is that the one thing that sucks about Mike McDaniel is they're slow because they run motion on every goddamn play. And they snap the ball at 5 seconds on the play clock because they're sending 3 guys in motion at different points of every snap. So if like the Lions aren't ahead, like the Dolphins are really slow.
I just pulled up from the Blitz, Derek Carty's the Blitz, the game level factors, and 127 plays projected. Arizona, Minnesota, 133 is the big boy number, and the lowest is LA and San Fran at 122. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like in the middle of the pack to below. Yeah. 127.
We saw it again, like the Steelers game on Sunday night. Like when they're ahead, they do like what the Shanahan system has always done, right? Like they're gonna run the ball on early downs. They're gonna do all the things that we kind of loathe and kind of let the other team hang around like the Steelers did and have a shot to win the game. But yeah, just one thing to know, like when like this game has huge potential, but also like there is also potential where like Raheem Mostert just drowns these dudes out.
Yeah. I like. I guess like John saying, just you could play Mostert and Hill and just kind of onslaught it if you want with Tua as well and just get all the touchdowns. And it looks like, who knows? But first look, probably a low scoring week. Just not a lot of games gonna be jumping out. We talk about other players in our game. We'll see how excited we get about that. But do want to mention, we kind of touched on it earlier in the show. Sponsor the show, Thrive. Get rid of me some Thrive boys. Join in on the fantasy prop action this NFL season. Thrive Fantasy, easy to play, no salary cap style contest, revolves around an over-under style player prop. Each prop has a fantasy score associated with the prop. The riskier the prop, the higher the fantasy score. You rack up the most points for your share of the prize pool. Talked about a promo code. It's Grinders, GRINDERS. Sign up for a deposit bonus up to $250 as well as free tickets. If you deposit between $100 and $499, you get 2 free individual $20 contest tickets. You deposit $500, 6 free $20 contest tickets. Terms and conditions do apply. Check out the RotoGrinders review page for Thrive Fantasy in the description for more. Just pulled up one of their big boy contests, the one that has I think it's 100K, 20K up top. You got to pick 10 of these 20. Rich, I'll go to you first. Be as ambitious as you want to be. Take a side, over or under, who we like.
Why didn't we pull this up? Derrick Henry has rushing plus receiving yards at 102.5.
Whoa.
There's our answer.
For over, but it's not a lot of points, is it? Or is it a big?
It's even split. It's 100.
Oh, come on. We're going to smash the over on that, right? We kind of have to.
Yeah, I would think so. But that one's pretty interesting. How about this one too with Jonathan Taylor, 83.5 rushing yards. He's at that once this year.
Scroll down, dude.
No, that one's we gotta go over though. That one's not worth it. I saw that one. Neither is the Aaron Rodgers one. That one's not worth it either.
What's your lean? 241 passing yards. Your lean is over or under?
Oh, under, but we're paying the man on that. Tyler Lockett over 74.5 receiving yards looks pretty good at 115.
Yeah.
If like you said, if the weather's not bad, we're going to talk. I think we'll talk about Tyler Lockett.
Oh, buddy. Yes, we will.
Yeah. DK Metcalf presumably going to be out. We'll talk about that one soon enough.
Tyreek over just one touchdown. We just talked about he's due, baby.
Yeah. And you get 100 points for it. Sure. It's got to be a receiving touchdown. You can't get he can catch a little punt pass or
the pop pass.
Pop pass. I don't like.
We can also tack on, for the reasons we mentioned, Hopkins. We get 10 more points for going over 6.5 receptions. Oh, yeah. I know it's a lot, but let's just say they keep on moving them around.
I like that.
Cliff Kingsbury surprisingly took AJ Green off the field. I actually didn't think he would do that. So credit where it's due. Maybe he keeps Hopkins at an optimal position all over the field.
And this is one thing you can do on Thrive. Like earlier today, I did a 2-player NBA player prop where you can just basically making exactas with props. I have not checked to see how they're doing, but I'm trying to keep online as far as this is an NFL show. I got some basketball props going right now live. I don't want to tilt live on there. People don't want to hear that. John, you got anything else here as far as any picks? I think we kind of covered it, right? We gave out our favorites.
We gave out 3, 4. Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Again, use the promo code Grinders, GRINDERS, $250 deposit bonus, up to a $250 deposit bonus. You get those free tickets as well. John, favorite plays at quarterback. We've talked about Jalen Hurts. Who's your favorite besides him? Where do you want to? Do we just play Jalen Hurts? Just what do we screw around for?
I think the Giants-Seahawks game is interesting, as we keep on hinting at. We know the Giants and Wink Martindale are still blitzing at the league's highest rate, 45% of dropbacks. And Geno Smith has the league's second highest completion rate, only behind Kenny Pickett, oddly enough, against the blitz for just over 7 yards per attempt. And so if they're just going to send the house, like that opens up a ceiling for Geno Smith. A couple weeks ago, we mentioned Cardinals defense putting the clamp on since they got healthy. So it makes sense that Geno failed, and that was the first blip on the radar. And then last week, it was basically the Ken Walker show. Maybe it's the Ken Walker show again. But overall, I think it's a sneaky spot for Geno Smith to bounce back here with a ceiling game. And he won't get played, even though that game has sneaky shootout potential, because he's let people down 2 weeks in a row now.
Rich?
Yeah, I think that it's a fun quarterback slate because Jalen Hurts is, especially when you look at it from a FanDuel perspective, because they made Hurts 9-2. Like, they're finally doing kind of what I was at least asking for him to do. So now it at least makes you think, right? Like, man, like it's a huge gap, because we always talk about it when like Mark Andrews, like on a slate like last week, right? Like, or it's like, do we go all the way up to this one guy that can be good, or do we just take our chances with the field? And that's kind of where we are this week at quarterback. And especially if you don't believe the Steelers are going to do anything in that game, right? Because we always talk about Jalen Hurts, like he's one touchdown pass in the second half of the games this year. So now you've got a bunch of guys that you can kind of have some fun with. I think Daniel Jones in that same game is pretty interesting, especially on DraftKings at 5-7. He's running around a lot. I think Davis Mills is pretty interesting. Not going to be very fun, but if you're going to stack that game, we got Big Dog, Davis Mills, Brandon Cook stacks. Like, what doesn't get you more excited for some Week 8 DFS than that?
I wish he had at least one more good game this year, except last week's garbage time, or didn't do anything in garbage time last week, because that's the only reason I keep on thinking about Davis Mills.
Well, and the Titans are terrible against the pass.
That's
It's the same thing. They've already allowed 4 QB1 scoring weeks in 6 games, 29th in passing points allowed per pass. Remember, we brought up Wentz in this spot a couple weeks ago, and everyone kind of rolled their eyes, and Wentz was like the QB4 on the week. So, they're going to be trailing. The big dog is going to be trampling. So, he's interesting. And then, listen, we got to talk about Sam Ellinger. We just have to. Got to do it, man. He's 4K. He's what, 6 on FanDuel? I think he's 6'5" on FanDuel.
Different conversation on FanDuel. Doesn't seem necessary over there.
4K, because you could get the 100-yard rushing bonus on DraftKings. Like, it's possible. This dude ran for 1,900 yards in college, which includes sack yardage factored in, because for some reason, if Dean, you really want to grind my gears thing, like this. Why the hell does sack yardage count against rushing yardage? Like, who is the dumbass that thought of this? Like, why? Why is this a thing? He also ran for 33 rushing touchdowns at Texas. He's really good at protect. Like, his 2 hallmarks coming out are that, like, he doesn't turn the ball over and he runs. Of all passers to come out of college since 2000, he's 80th percentile in touchdown to interception rate. But as a passer, not very good. 41st percentile in yards per pass attempt coming out of all prospects since 2000, 54th percentile in completion rate. He did play really well in the preseason this year. He was 24 of 29, 10 yards per pass attempt, 4 touchdowns, no picks. They do like him. But I think the more interesting thing about Sam Ellinger is that just like what he represents in the context of this season, right? So we've seen the NFL, teams are really struggling with pocket passers. NFL defenses are playing more shell coverage. They're forcing teams to have 8-10 play drives, right? Not make mistakes, forcing you to be sturdy in pass protection. The Colts were doing none of those things. So you look at these teams that are overachieving in the NFC, or like in the NFL, like you look at the Giants, you look at the Bears, you look at the Atlanta Falcons. Like, what do they have? What are they doing? They're using a mobile quarterback, right? They're not really lighting it up through the air, but you can't win with like these average pocket passers in the NFL anymore. Like, you have to have something else. And it's been really tough. And the Colts are looking at this situation with the half of Matt Ryan, and they can't win this way. They tried to go no huddle 2 weeks ago. And this week they tried to bleed people with like a bunch of 6-yard passes down the field, and it just can't work. Their offensive line isn't good enough. Their playmakers aren't good enough. They need to infuse something into this offense to help them move the football. And I think it's very interesting that they didn't choose to go to Nick Foles, right? Because he does the same shit. Like, you need to do something different with their offense when it's in this kind of rut, and when teams are playing defense like they are in the construct of 2022. And it makes a lot of sense why they have to do it. Is it going to work? I don't know, but I applaud them for making this move right now to try to salvage the season.
But worth noting, you said all those touchdowns, actually 4 college seasons. It's still a lot, right? 33 rushing touchdowns, but it is worth noting. Only 2 the first year. I don't know if he played a ton. Looks like he didn't play a ton the first season. His freshman year, he was there for a long time. The key is, of course, he's 4K. That's worth noting. 4K opens everything up, and it's not on paper, there's only a couple quarterbacks theoretically you have to dodge when it comes to massive ceiling, right? Namely Hurts there in Philadelphia. And just again, Wednesday night, who knows? But I'm excited possibly about the Tennessee quarterback if Tannehill doesn't. How excited should we be when it comes to Malik Willis, who legit has he'll see those legs of Ellinger and raise them, right? I think.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Go to Rich. My Best Western internet is kind of breaking up. I guess I'm not going to get a sponsorship from Best Western now. But
Rich, am I trying to make Malik Willis? And again, who even knows? There's no reason to put a lot of thought into it on a Wednesday night. But how interesting would he be, or how would you dig into Willis if he becomes potentially a thing if Tannehill can't go?
I would if it wasn't this particular spot where I just believe they're going to hand the ball off at nauseum anyways.
Yeah.
Like this is just a situation that if they had to go to Malik Willis, they could hide him. And I don't think that they're just really going to have to do anything besides give the ball to Derrick Henry a ton in this game. But yeah, I mean, Malik Willis is kind of when he does eventually get to start, or they give him a shot at this thing. I mean, he has Lamar Jackson type of rushing upside. I mean, he's coming up. He ran for 27 touchdowns his past years as a starter. He had a 96 percentile career rushing score in my prospect model. He's that kind of guy. He's also an awful passer. He's a bad quarterback right now. And he was bad in the preseason. He's a really bad quarterback right now. That's why it's a work in progress with him. But what he represents, again, is tell you the Titans are winning games. So they're going to keep doing what they do. But if this was a situation where the Titans were sitting at 1-4, 1-5, they would need to go to this and have something infused in their offense that they just don't have right now. But they're going to run all over the Texans, man. They're just going to run all over them.
But if you weren't already excited to play Sam Ellinger after our rousing endorsement, went to playerprofiler.com. Best comparable to Sam Ellinger? It's Chase Daniel. Get excited. Does that check out for you, Rich? Does that sound about right?
No, I mean, Chase Daniel never ran. He never did anything cool.
I was thinking it was Tim Tebow.
Hey, I'm just taking up with the Fantasy Mansion, right? That's his site, I believe it is. He could speak to it, I suppose. Maybe there's a.
I always thought he was Ryan Fitzpatrick, coming out
okay.
He'll just kind of make some plays that you don't think a guy, because he's not overly athletic, but will run and to try to truck a dude, and you're just why'd you do that? And he's kind of one of those gamers, man.
John, some of your favorite running backs. We kind of touched on Henry. If you want to bring that point home, by all means, go for it. Pierce on the other side of that game looks pretty interesting too, basically claiming that backfield. Who do you like as far as running back in week 8?
We've talked about a lot of them already. Just to also tag along with Rich's 3 consecutive games, 200 yards. Henry has averaged 6 yards per carry in 10 career games against the Texans as well. He's chalk for a reason. And then I'm kind of just waiting to see the news on what's going to happen with Christian McCaffrey, because you mentioned the low play volume, the lower total, of course, but also the 49ers can clearly win this game. And Christian McCaffrey last week was the RB 34 on just 10 touches, 28% of snaps in this offense. We saw Jeff Wilson handle a season low 37% of their backfield touches. So now with an extra week on this playbook, it may be a week where you can possibly sneak McCaffrey in. He was the RB3 in points per game on the Panthers offense, running a league low in plays per game. So I'm not really too concerned about the play volume, since we think it's a significantly better offense.
No discount as far as the price on McCaffrey.
That's the issue on DraftKings. Yeah.
Yeah, 8.5 on FanDuel, 8.7 on DK, and got to expect a jump snaps, right? Like you said, 28%. But when he was out there, he was getting the ball. They're basically telling him like that this is who's getting it. Here's CMC.
He already played as many snaps inside the 10-yard line with the 49ers than he did with the Panthers.
Amazing.
That's a stat. That's amazing. That's what an indictment on Carolina. What's the number? Like 3?
Yeah, it was. They had 4. They had 4 snaps.
That's incredible. Wow.
He didn't get the ball in any of them. What's funny is they dialed up like an awesome passing play inside the 10 to Jeff Wilson, and I don't know if he lost it in the sun or what. He missed it, but it was like, why didn't you run that play with McCaffrey? I guess he probably wouldn't have been that open, but.
Rich, feel free to add somebody to the conversation as far as running back. And I do want your thoughts as far as the Jets. Obviously, Breece Hall being gone, they traded for James Robinson. What are you expecting as far as the split with Carter and Robinson?
Well, I think we've seen it with Robbie Anderson, seen it with Chris McCaffrey, right? Like James Robinson will have a couple more day run out, but like, what can we really expect for him? Like in the getting there this opening game, right? Like, what can we really expect for him? I would definitely.
Isn't running back the easiest position though? Basically, just kind of jump in and go, or am I wrong to say that?
I mean, clearly not, because Chris McCaffrey is really good, and they were losing. They were losing bad.
Exactly. You pick up a guy off the street, like Latavius Murray, for example. I don't know if it's the same system he used to play. I couldn't tell you, but I mean,
but again, he was same thing. He ddidn't play that first game. They made him inactive, right? And then and they took him a week. Like, there's still a lot, verbiage. There's a lot that goes into it instead of just like, here, I'm gonna hand you the football, right? Like. There's a lot more. There's a lot more that goes into it. So I wouldn't expect Robinson plays. I mean, maybe I'm overly wrong. I mean, it's not like, and plus like Robinson, like who even knows what's really going on with him. But I'd rather talk about some running backs I care about. And also, I do want to grind. Like, why are the Jets uniforms black? Like, why do the Jets have black uniforms? Like, it's like such a 90s thing. Like, let's add black to these uniforms. Like, 'cause they're wearing these black helmets this week. Like, make some dope green stuff. Like, why are we doing black Jets uniforms? But anyways, that same game we've been talking about, Seattle and the Giants, there are 3 running backs that are top 3 in rushing yards gained on explosive runs, carries or 10 more yards. Nick Chubb leads the league. Number 2 is Saquon Barkley. Number 3 is Kenneth Walker. These defenses they're playing against rank 31st and 29th in yardage allowed on explosive runs. Like, this could be a game where Kenneth Walker have like a bunch of 2-yard carries, and then each dude has like a 50 or 60-yard carry, added in. So like both those running backs, I think are great plays. I do find it, what's interesting about this fantasy season from a DFS perspective, Saquon really never draws a lot of ownership. Like he doesn't really get played a lot.
He's pretty pricey. I think. I feel like his price adjusted really quickly. Not that he's not worth it, but you find guys along the way as you work your way up the ladder as far as salary. I think that's the reason why. But
yeah, I mean, we got a guy getting basically has been his offense. He's getting 24 touches per game. Like, he's worth paying for, and just never really gets. He never really gets there. But yeah, maybe it's just we've had so many cheap guys too, like last week, and obviously the last 2 weeks with Kenneth Walker. But at least he got bumped up, and then obviously, if Tony Pollard does start, like, this is just such a tremendous spot. I mean, the Bears are good against the pass. Like Dale kind of alluded to, like, they're young guys. They're good. They're actually legit good against the pass right now. But they are getting killed by backs. Like 23rd in yards per carry allowed to running backs, 28th in rushing points allowed per game. Running backs are averaging 24 carries against them. It's the 4th most in the league. There's a lot of potential here for Tony Pollard. They don't even have another running back up on the roster. Like, they've been just there's only 2 running backs active, like, for every game so far this season. The other guy in their practice squad, I think, is Quadri Olison. Yeah. Like, I mean, last time he only have 1 career game with Tony Pollard playing without Zeke, and he had 90% of the snaps. He was the RB1, and he played with Andy Dalton. Like, I mean, he's going to be so immensely. I mean, he'll be immensely popular, but maybe he'll just take ownership away from Raheem Mostert.
If Chuba Hubbard's ruled out too, like, it's going to be Tony Pollard, Deontay Foreman in every freaking lineup.
I don't know if that's the case, because Foreman plays for the Panthers.
People love Foreman though.
Do they? Okay.
They want their dynasty rosters to be resurrected after Foreman's month with the Titans last year.
He's 5'3" on DK, 6'4" on FanDuel. Would he have basically the entire backfield, or who is Raheem Blackshear?
Raheem Blackshear, yeah, I got sprinkled in for a little bit of touches. I don't know, but we don't have to play that game since we have a lot of running backs on this slate, and we don't know the injury situation just yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, that would make it more appealing, I suppose. What a terrible game that's going to be. It's just going to be all running, right? That game's going to be over like in an hour and a half. Carolina versus Atlanta. We'll see. All right. John, what do you got as far as receivers?
Let me tell you about the terrible game and the terrible DJ Moore in that terrible game, because after you see 42% of the team's targets when the second wide receiver gets traded, that's interesting enough. And usually I don't want to play a receiver like that with that kind of volume on the next week when he's going to get chased by the field. At the same time, though, the Falcons are allowing 12.8 yards per catch to opposing wide receivers, yards per target, and have allowed a league high 11 receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers, which helps when Tyler Boyd has 3 touchdowns against you. But overall, yes, it's once again an amazing voluminous spot for DJ Moore as well. And 5,300 on DraftKings is more than bearable. Deontay Johnson, I think if you're going to play Jalen Hurts, it's pretty interesting. It's ugly. I understand that. But 10 targets per game from Kenny Pickett for only 5 yards per target. The results haven't been there, but the boundary as well is where the Eagles have been spiked for a top 5 completion rate to opposing wide receivers. So I think he has a high floor if you just want a run back option from Pittsburgh. And then, as Rich alluded to, Tyler Lockett has a 27% target share with DK Metcalf off the field this year. Only 62 receiving yards the last 2 games. I would guess because of the injury he suffered. But again, given the Giants blitz rate and Geno's completion rate against the blitz this year, I think it's a pretty awesome spot for both Tyler Lockett and Marquise Goodwin.
Rich?
Yeah, Lockett he was targeted on 22% of his routes in that game. And when DK left the game, it jumped up to 33%. So he's going to get the ball. And he moves around a little bit too. The other thing too, where you talk about DJ Moore, is that the Falcons have lost everybody. They put Casey Hayward on IR 2 weeks ago. AJ Terrell left last week's game with a hamstring injury. He looks like he's probably already not going to play early in this week. So, I mean, they're trotting out some guys deep on the bench at this point. We saw that show up. Listen, we keep talking about the Giants Seahawks because, I mean, listen, Wandale's looking pretty good over on DraftKings where he's 4-7. You can't play him on FanDuel, unfortunately. I guess you could. He does have a touchdown, but he's way more optimal over that 4-7 pricing. He plays 71% of his snaps in the slot. He's been targeted on 36% and 24% of his routes. He's already kind of immediately established when he's on the field, he's going to draw targets. Seattle's very good against boundary receivers. We talked about that last week, but they are giving it up to opposing slot receivers. So, I mean, Wandale looks good. And in the game that we talked about, I know it's gross. Everyone's talking about how bad he's been, but Brandon Cooks this week, Nico Collins got hurt. Looks like he's probably not going to play. Had the groin injury. They're trying out guys like Chris Moore and Philip Dorsett. They need both those guys to get in the box. But last week was the first week Brandon Cooks had a sub 20% team target share in a game this season. The Titans are allowing 29 points per game to opposing wide receivers on the outside. They've allowed a league high 11 yards per target, 31st in catch rate to opposing boundary receivers. So if we're running the big dog, man, you got a guy that we used to make fun of for always popping in the optimals, and he's going to be optimal this week and not be there in the optimals.
Derrick Henry and Brandon Cooks, little skinny stack. I don't know if I can get Dave. I can't attach Davis Mills to that, can I? I don't. Davis Mills.
I tried to talk you into it, but I get why you couldn't.
I'm happy to see Wan'Dale Robinson 69% snaps last game. 23% before that, jumped up. Is there any room for going beyond that, Rich, or is that basically what to expect? Because the Giants, they just keep rotating their guys. They don't run anybody 100% or even close to.
Yeah, I think he'll continue to get some more work, but the fact that he's limited to basically being a strict slot guy forces them to go. We only play when they go into 11 personnel. The Giants only threw 1 pass in the fourth quarter last week. Still a thing too. They still are not really willing to trust old dimes very much in the drop back passing game.
John, you got to sell us on some tight ends. Good luck.
Do I?
Well, I mean, feel free to get the old college try. Who do you like?
I guess we can wait out the injury report because I know it didn't do well last week, but if Amon-Ra St. Brown's ruled out and DJ Chark ruled out again, no one's going to play TJ Hawkinson. And we saw that game a couple weeks ago. He had a 30% target share without those two in particular. And I never play TJ Hawkinson unless those two are out. So that's something to watch for. And then, gosh, I don't want to say Tyler Higbee. Maybe if you want to get really ugly and you got Geno, like Tanner Hudson, I think is the next guy up for the Giants. If you're looking for a stone minimum tight end, that's the best I got, Dean. I'm really digging because I know the optimal probably says Noah Fant, but we're not going there.
The optimal does not. So now, to be fair, this is not. I have the RotoGrinders stuff, and again, it's Wednesday night. This stuff changes, but you're not gonna like this name either. Okay, everybody's gonna hate this name. 61% on DK. It's Kyle Pitts at 4K. But like you have to throw the ball in order for him to to catch it. And Atlanta doesn't despite being down multiple touchdowns. I don't know, man. They're like Air Force in college, basically. It's bad. But Kyle Pitts is 4K, and it's tight end. Rich, Kyle Pitts.
Sure.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, sure. I mean, they tried to throw him a touchdown again last week. They were trying. Okay. Got pushed out of the end zone, but yeah, in this slate, sure, 4K.
Kyle Pitts, Tanner Hudson, sure, yep,
sure. Basically, listen, man, we're in a week where people are like excited to play Irv Smith. Like this is the life. I think Pat Freiermuth is really good on DraftKings.
He's a good one too. Yeah,
he's too cheap. 3.9 for Pat Freiermuth's usage is pretty wild to me, because when you look at where he's third among all tight ends in the NFL in target rate per route. He's missed a couple of times. He's missed a little bit of time. It's been off the field, but you saw it again last Sunday night. He had 9 targets again. He's played 5 full games this season, and he's been a top 10 scorer in 4 of them. 3.9 is too cheap. He's 4th in tight ends in yards per route run. Like I said, 3rd in target rates per route run. It's a crummy matchup against the Eagles, but 3.9 is very cheap for a guy that 1 is good, has pedigree, and 2 is getting targeted a lot.
Is it a crummy matchup? Because you got to expect they're going to be, throwing and chucking a bunch in the second half. You're saying X's and O's bad matchup?
Well, yeah, just peripherally, the tight ends and haven't done anything against the Eagles so far this year. So that's really it. But he's getting for 3.9 though. He's the same price as Pitts, but look at the usage between Pat Freiermuth and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. By the way, he's 3rd in the optimal for the record, 14%. In the middle is Higbee, so it's Pitts, Higbee, and Freiermuth. I would just say this, and who knows what's happening on Sunday, but right now my general thought, John, is if there's a big chalky tight end, it's probably bad chalk. It's
got to be Irvin Ertz. It's got to be
Irv for sure. Irv is going to get the smoke.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, I just feel a bad chalk. You could avoid. I had this similar thought process with Hawkinson that 1 week, and oh man! And
last week was fine. Both Dulcich and Otten got the 10 PPR points. I know a lot of people got to Foster Moreau somehow, but Otten and Dulcich were. They did what they were supposed to do. They knew the assignment. All
right. Is that what we're closing out on, Otten and Dulcich? I think that's what we're closing out on.
I think
you got to finish strong here.
That's better than Tanner Hudson. So yes, let's stick with those.
And in the chat, I see that someone brought up Harrison Bryant. He's on Monday night, so he's not
right. We didn't go there this week.
If Njoku doesn't play, is he injured? That's a season-long question. That's a showdown question, I suppose.
That's a showdown question.
Yeah, and Njoku seems legitimately questionable. We'll see. And
he's out.
He's out. They said 2 to 5 weeks. 2 to 5 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, I'm focused on the main slates. I had no idea.
He'll be another guy we look back on in 3 weeks, and that we'll just say, why didn't they just put him on the IR?
Yes. All right. As always, John, we got to tell the people. There's one person out there. This guy's pretty sharp. I don't know why I don't follow his content. John, tell them where they can find you, all the socials, all the good stuff. Where they find John Daigle around the interwebs?
You can find me at a Best Western in real life, and then you can find me at 4for4.com, where the waiver wire column was up Tuesday. Got a last minute update this morning for injuries. And if you want 25% off, if you DM me at @JDaigle on Twitter, I bet I can still get you that big discount. So everything's there.
There you go. You know a guy. Rich, what do you got?
Edward Reeves on Twitter, sharpfootballanalysis.com. Every Wednesday night with my guys Daigle and Dean.
Do appreciate y'all listening. The NFL Pick 6 show here at RotoGrinders, week number 8 in the books. For John, for Rich, for producer Steve, for Best Western, for Naked Bootlegs, for Steve Bono. That was Dean. Thanks for listening. Good luck this week. Win yourself some money. We're out of here. Oh!